Prime Minister Kallas, thank you so much for joining us on TNG this morning. Now, Joe Biden has warned Ukraine's president that the country could face a Russian invasion within weeks. How worried are you by recent events?
Well, of course, we are worried. We are looking the picture of what we see Russia building its military capabilities around Ukraine, making all those threats regarding Ukraine, but not only Ukraine, but also countries, member states of NATO like us. Of course, we don't see any military direct threat at our borders right now. But we are very worried because if Russia goes any further in Ukraine, then it affects the overall security situation of Europe.
And what do you believe that Vladimir Putin is up to? What do you think that he wants to achieve?
Well, he has been very clear of his intentions for a very long time already. First of all, he has said publicly that he doesn't consider Ukraine being an independent country. So his thoughts on that have been very clear. And now Russia has also made very strong demands regarding NATO. And it reminds me of the former Soviet Union Foreign Minister Alexei Gromyko, who said about the negotiation tactics that basically three things. First of all, demand absolute maximum. Do not meekly ask, but demand. Second, present ultimatums. And third, do not give 1 inch in negotiations, because there will always be people in the West who will offer you something that you didn't have before. And by the end of it, you will have already a third or even a half of something that was never yours. So this is exactly the same pattern that we see unfolding right now with Putin.
And there are some who are saying, oh, well, this could just be a big bluff. Putin may not follow through on many of these things. I wondered, do you think war is imminent?
Well, this is one of the looks at this picture that that it's a big bluff, but then it has been pushed so far that Putin also has to have something to get out of this. Or if you painted yourself in the corner, how do you get out of this corner? And it's presenting all those demands. Considering that making one step back might make you look weak, then it is very hard to see that it's only a bluff. So of course nobody sees into the head of Putin, but putting all these elements together, it's very hard to say that it's only a bluff.
Now, Estonia has been very welcome in terms of talking about help for Ukraine, has been vocal about this, also in terms of actions. But yet Europe is divided. I wondered, have you been disappointed by the response across Europe?
Europe has not been divided. I think we have been strong and united, both in NATO and European Union. And this has negatively surprised Russia that we have kept a unified line. When there was a NATO-Russia Council, then 30 allies all presented the same points. And that surprised Russia, I think, because in their interest is that we are divided, but it's not in our interest in NATO or European Union. We might have different ideas about tactics, how to approach this, but I think in general the idea is the same. Russia has no say of who can be member of NATO and how NATO decides how the security or defense is organized within NATO.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, just because I think from the UK there is at least a perspective that Germany is charting a different path. So, for example, this idea of suspending permits for the supply of their weapons from Estonia to Ukraine. And also, for example, Latvia's defense minister has said, Germany's, and this is their quote, immoral and hypocritical relationship with Russia and China has driven a wedge between Western and Eastern Europe. Is that something you recognise?
Well, every country has the right to decide, of course, how they support other countries and what kind of steps they make. We have decided that we support Ukraine in all the aspects that we can. Politically, it's very important that there are high-level visits to Ukraine. Also, we try to help them with the means that we have, because it is for their self-defense. And I think Germany has kept the same line, but I guess for giving the permits, I think they are still discussing this, and they might make other decisions, but it's up to them to decide and say what Germany does, not us.
But would you hope to see Germany will decide to give the permits?
Of course, it's up to them to decide, but it's our will to give those to Ukraine, because we really see that they need those capabilities for their defense.
I just wondered on that. I mean, is it your view that NATO, rather than the EU, is the ultimate guarantor of security for Estonia when it comes to these type of situations?
Well, yes, NATO is a defense union, defense alliance, and for us, Article 5 of the NATO agreements that says that attack on one is attack on all is part of our collective defense or defense posture that we have here. Of course, we make our own investments to defense. We increased our defense spending by 380 million just last week. But we also rely on our allies because the collective defense is also part of it. When it comes to European Union, then European Union is economic power, and the tools that European Union has are also economical. That means sanctions. And there also, I'm happy to say that so far, when we talk about the sanctions, the line is quite clear. And unified, that if Russia is making moves, then there will be strong response also from the European Union side.
Now, you touched on it earlier on, but I just wondered, how worried are you that Estonia, a country once occupied by the Soviet Union, could be next if Russia does decide to proceed in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, we don't see any military threat at our borders, and I think our situation is completely different compared to Ukraine. We are part of NATO, and as I said, the attack on one is attack on all, which means that I often make this parallel of the school bully. So if you have a school bully, but you also have strong and big friends, then the bully might not, bully you. So this is definitely something that we is different from Ukraine in that sense, that we are part of NATO. So we don't see any direct military threat, but as I said before, when the problem escalates or the situation escalates in Ukraine, it affects whole of Europe's security.
And I suppose you may be worried about a precedent if this does happen.
Excuse me?
A precedent. If Russia does choose to go to Ukraine, then it could obviously give Putin a level of confidence to go further.
Well, this is true. If you look back, I mean, the moves that Russia has made, first in 2014, Crimea, then Donbas, and then they just move further away, and then we discuss already, the new territories, not giving back the old territories that they have occupied. And this is definitely a very worrying sign, because if Putin sees that he can make these moves without the reactions, then this will show us weaker and gives Russia the possibility to make the moves. But yes, I think attacking a NATO country is a completely another subject, really.
Now, Tom's going to join in a minute with a few questions of his own, but I just wondered first, I mean, you talked about big friends. Where does Britain feature in this? Do you think Britain has done enough? Boris Johnson has said this week that more troops could be sent to Estonia if Russia does invade Ukraine.
Well, we are very grateful for UK. Really, it is the biggest military presence outside UK that is in Estonia. So there are over 800 soldiers here, and they are part of our collective defense and acting or will be acting together with our army here. So I think it's something that UK has done, and we are very grateful for that. But we have been talking about strengthening the eastern flank of NATO because of this aggression, and we have been talking about this already for years. So we also emphasize that it's important now, and if UK decides to do something, we are very happy to accept more troops here.
Now, just finally for me, there's some in Britain who would say, the UK should not be throwing out its soldiers into, a conflict which is far away from them. And I wondered, what's your message to them?
Well, NATO or European Union is not very far away from Great Britain. Yes, you are an island, and that makes you maybe a bit different. But we have seen from the history that the security situation in Europe is a whole, and everybody is affected. And again, I think the goal of us, for all of us, is to prevent a war. If it is deterring by strong troops, then we achieve this goal that there will be no further escalation.
Prime Minister, a quick few questions from me. Have you been in specific conversations with the UK government, with Defence Secretary Ben Wallace or Boris Johnson, about expanding the number of UK troops in Estonia very soon? And if so, what sort of number of expansion would you like to see?
Well, of course, our defense ministers are in constant contact with each other, but I would not present any specific numbers, because this is up to the negotiations, the details.
But you're expecting some more British troops at some stage, are you?
Well, as I said, if Britain decides on their half that they are ready to send more troops, then it's up to us to talk the conditions through. But yes, strengthening the eastern flank has been one of the objects. Of course, it can be also capabilities that we are talking about generally here.
Let me ask you about Germany, which you discussed briefly there with Katie, especially Germany's dependence on Russian gas, which affects the EU's and NATO's response to the Ukraine crisis, undoubtedly. Do you worry that Germany is now far too dependent on their energy supply from Russia?
Well, if we look over the years, then overall dependence of European Union on Russian gas has increased, not decreased, which is a worrying sign. I mean, I just some few months ago read the book by Mark Leonard called The Age of Unpeace, where he shows the connections that the connections that we have might also hurt each other, or be aware of with whom you are connected, because the other side can be also damaging you. But I think Nord Stream 2, we have always said that it's a geopolitical project. It's not the economical one, and I think it has this winter has been painting this picture very clear that the Russian gas and dependence on Russian gas is not beneficial for any European countries, because the prices are going very high. And
so whatever happens in Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 should be stopped here and now.
We have always said that. So we have been against this project from the very beginning, and used all the tools that are in our hands to oppose this.
And let me also ask you about the very deep financial as well as political links in Berlin, amongst some very senior figures in Berlin with Russia. And I'm thinking, for example, of the former SPD Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. Now, we have a new SPD Chancellor in Germany now. Gerhard Schröder is the chairman of Nord Stream and of Rosneft, which a fact you'll be very well aware of. Does that trouble you, just how closely those links are?
Of course, I mean, this has been discussed for long, this kind of, revolving doors or the jumping into business that has huge interest. I think, the picture is not good if you look like this, and of course the dependence on the Russian gas as a whole is not good for Europe, and this is something that we have been emphasizing all along.
Prime Minister, thank you. I should let Katie thank you. It's her interview, but for me, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.